when we're speaking about edge, Kyle, who else do we have in this class? No Will Anderson, none of those guys, but an impactful rookie that might slide under the radar. And we look back 6, 7, 8 months after the draft and say, wow, how did this guy fall to the third round or the fourth round? Who's one of those guys for you, Kyle? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Draft Network channel. It's your boy Ray G, joined as always by the talented group of scouts, Damian Parson, Joe Marino, Keith Sanchez, and Kyle Krabs. And this is the November edition of the TDN 100. And this is an exciting one because we're going to talk about the guys that get after the quarterbacks. Yes, the defensive side of the ball. We got to show some love to the defensive side of the ball. And I want to talk about some of the edge rushers, not Will Anderson, not Myles Murphy. We know those names. Tyree Wilson, we talk about them all the time. I want to know about somebody else inside this 2023 class that has the potential to be an elite game changer at the next level. We've got 17 edge rushers inside that top 100. And as you level up inside the top 50, the top 30, we get a little tighter and tighter. So I just want to kick it around to the scouts and tell us somebody that has been rising for you. And DP, I'm going to start with you. Who's one of the guys that you can put on the edge that's going to be able to make an impact at the next level?
Man, Ray, he's one of my guys in my region at Auburn. Derek Hall, 6'3", 256, explosive, dense frame, long arm. This is a type of guy that he's got 28 pressures, 11 sacks on this, 11 QB hits, and 8 sacks on the season. And just watching him develop over the past couple months has been really fun for me, man. I really love what he brings. And like I said, you put him on the edge and you allow him to be that explosive, athletic rusher that can get after the quarterback. Hey, you want to talk about a guy that's underneath the top tier? Let's talk about Derek Hall.
Give me the size. What are the measurables on Hall? What are we looking at, DP? What are we looking at?
6'3", 256. I don't have his exact arm length. We'll get that at the Senior Bowl, but he does have that really good reach, and he uses it well, plays that half man, strikes opponents, their chest plates well. He does a lot of great things as a rusher, man.
What are we looking at? 3-4 outside backer, or can he put his hand in the dirt and get after the quarterback?
He does a little bit of both, right? He stands up, he puts his hand in the dirt, he drops off in the coverage. He's a really good athlete. I was surprised to see them use him the way that they did off ball sometimes this year, which I would prefer them to just let him go downhill. But he shows that he's got a wider range of skills.
Kyle, I kind of want to talk about that because DP brought up something, right? He can put his hand in the dirt, he can drop back into coverage. You know, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan down here in Texas, and the thing that I can't stand is when I see Micah Parsons standing up at Mike Backer. But when we're speaking about edge, Kyle, who else do we have in this class? No Will Anderson, none of those guys, but an impactful rookie that might slide under the radar. And we look back 6, 7, 8 months after the draft and say, wow, how did this guy fall to the third round or the fourth round? Who's one of those guys for you, Kyle?
Well, you know, you can thank Dame here because I was going to go with Derek Hall as my top guy to talk about here. He's been put in the top 25 in a couple mock drafts now with our group, and I really like his game. But I think for a little bit of a different reason, there's another guy here who I think makes a lot of sense, and that's Nolan Smith out of Georgia. He has a season-ending injury, and the question now is, okay, from a medical's perspective, is that going to prompt a little bit of a fall down the board? And if it does, and the pre-draft process is incomplete with information, it's 6'3", 235, 240-pound linebacker hybrid type. You talked about Micah Parsons being able to stand up, move around the formation, and be a chess piece. I think Nolan Smith can do a lot of that, and he's really impactful on the edge. We've seen another one of these types of players in Baron Browning develop into an impact-type player for the Denver Broncos throughout the course of this season. And Nolan Smith's kind of got that same versatility about his game. And with the injury and the size question for him being about a 240-pound guy, I wouldn't be surprised if NFL teams are a little apprehensive to draft him too early. But that's a name I don't want us to forget in this conversation because we're seeing more players like this come into the pros and have coaching staffs that are more receptive to getting this guy on the field and moving him around and utilizing his strengths in different ways.
We're going to come back to that because as we wrap up, I want to talk about just the evolution of players in the NFL, edge rushers. We're seeing offensive tackles that are built like tight ends. They just look just physically just sculpted, right? Greek gods out there playing the position. So I want to circle back to that once we get through all of you guys. Keith, Give us an edge rusher that you're really high on that you think is kind of fallen under the radar, one of those names that we're not quite familiar with, but we should know.
Yeah, man, I think Florida State did it again, right? They managed to get another transfer. And when I first heard the news starting the beginning of the season, I didn't believe it. I'm like, what is the likeliness that Florida State was able to get another guy who's a potential first rounder via the transfer portal? But they did it again, man. This guy came out hot. Jared Verse, defensive end from Florida State, started the season off with 2 sacks. So you're talking about a hell of a debut, taking that step up to the FBS level. And he's been consistent. He's finished the season with 7.5 sacks, but 4 of his last 5 games, I believe he's had a sack or a half a sack. So you're talking about a guy that can consistently get to the quarterback. And I know you asked everybody else about positional versatility, and this guy's listed at 6'4", 250 pounds. And I think he has the opportunity to put his hand in the ground, or he can be a stand-up edge guy and really get after the quarterback. So I'm looking for Jared Verse to continue to make an impact. But for me right now, he's definitely an early riser and somebody that I have my eye on and circled as a guy that could be an impact edge rusher.
Appreciate that, Keith. And that's a name that I'm starting to see pop up more and more in the first round of mocks. And I've been wanting to ask you guys, who is this cat? Because I've seen my Cowboys, him mocked to the Dallas Cowboys a couple of times. And to be honest with you, I had no clue who he was. So is this a player that you think has first round talent? And does he have that 3-down skill set to be on the field all 3 downs, Keith?
Yeah, I think so. And you're asking who is he? And he's a guy that gets after the quarterback. And once, we've talked about Will Anderson and Miles Murphy and those guys, and you're talking about a second tier of edge rushers, I think he's right there, and he has his name definitely in the mix. So, man, him getting mocked to your Cowboys, Ray G, I think that's a good sign for you and the boys.
Well, I'll take that. I'll take that, Keith. Joe, who's one of the players for you on that on the edge that's been a riser you think is under the radar, and you think as the process continues to unfold, you could just see this player having more and more buzz and actually being impactful at the NFL level?
Yeah, the name I want to mention here is Iowa edge Lucas Van Ness. He's only a redshirt sophomore, 6'5", 270 pounds. And my goodness, this guy has power, he has length, and he's got a lot of athleticism for the type of player that he is, that really his game's predicated on power and length and really that ability to reduce rush angles and play through contact and really, really stress the edges of blockers because he can just power through. And I think the reason he hasn't gotten a lot of buzz is he really hasn't started a lot of games for Iowa, and that's somewhat concerning. But when he's on the field, he's very, very impactful. In 2021, he was more of a B-gap defender, kicked out to more of an edge player this year, but he gives you that ability to reduce down inside and attack some of those interior gaps in addition to being able to win out on the edge. And so I think he's a pretty dynamic athlete for a player of his body type and his style and is just his composition overall. Tons of power. And if you're looking for that guy that can really just collapse the width of the pocket with consistency, has a really dynamic bull rush, and how he builds his pass rush repertoire off of that, I get excited about Lucas Van Ness. We'll see if he comes out. And if he does, people get to the tape, I think they're going to like what they see.
Joe, I want to stick with you. And this is a question, all the scouts, I want all of you to just sort of give me your feedback on this. Joe, when I'm thinking about a defensive end, an edge rusher, right, in my mind, if I close my eyes, the first person I see is like Julius Peppers, right? 6'7", 290 pounds, could do it all, right? He could stop the run. He can get after the passer. But in today's NFL, you're seeing these leaner type edge rushers be able to get after the quarterback. They may not be on the field all 3 downs or have a full snap rotation. Do you think the NFL is sort of transitioning to, I don't want to use the baseball comparison, but you got your starting pitcher, you've got your relief pitcher, and you've got your closer. And I know your connection with the Buffalo Bills, Von Miller, when he gets out there, you know exactly what he's going to do, and he executes it to perfection. Are there some guys in this class that may not be full down players? They may not be out there 85, 90% of snaps, but do you think that could be really effective? And one of the names that pops to mind, and I'm sorry for using Cowboy references, it's Sam Williams, right? I'm watching him and sort of the skill set that he has and his speed and ability to get to the quarterback. He's not a complete player yet, but are there any of those guys in this class, whether it's somebody that was already mentioned, Joe, or somebody way under the radar that you think, man, you just get this guy in the right system, may not be a 3 down or a full complementary snap guy, but he'll be able to do some good things from you getting after the quarterback?
You know, Ray, the name that came to mind for me is Nolan Smith. I know Kyle talked about him, but what's unique about him is he's not very big, but my goodness, this guy is an exceptional run defender with his ability to squeeze blocks, to process, to fit the run, compete for his gap, take on pullers. I mean, he is textbook with that. And I think that's going to be really attractive, but really the pass rush production hasn't been there to the degree that you wish that it was, but you know he's got all of those tools for it to come together. And let's be honest, I mean, you're on a Georgia defense where there's so much talent. There's not that many plays to be made, right? Because everybody's, they're not on the field very often, and other guys are so good they're making plays as well. But I think he's got that there's a lot more to him, I think, as a player than what we've seen at Georgia. And so I think that run defense is going to be a big asset right away. And then you're going to see the pass rush component really start to come together, and I think he'll be a complete player.
Kyle, we talk about tools and traits all the time with quarterback. When you have an edge rusher that's got the talent, the physical tools, the makeup, how much of that is coachable, trainable? How much time does it take for one of those guys to develop that skill set to be a consistent player on the outside?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because everybody's a little different, and I think about a guy like Gregory Rousseau, who sat out the COVID year and gets drafted by Buffalo and is one of their most impactful pass rushers right off the jump as a player who didn't log a lot of reps. And you think about that projection for guys like Andre Carter in this year's class out of Army. Well, it's a height, weight, speed, really dynamic player, but he's a very linear player, and you don't really see the instincts, and he's getting challenged by the level of competition at Army, and it murkies that water. But at the end of the day, when you see developmental types that usually hit, it's because they have length, explosiveness, and room to grow, right? And I think if you're going to bet on pass rushers and based on the premium of the position, those usually end up being day two guys when it's all said and done. I know you mentioned the name Sam Williams, and he really blossomed his last year at Ole Miss as a pass rusher from a productivity standpoint. And there's examples of like Max Crosby was pick 106, right? Little undersized, but he grew into his frame a little bit more. He had the instincts and he had the explosiveness. So as you're looking for candidates that can move the needle, you can add size on a guy, but I don't think you can put the kind of motor in a guy that you need to really be a relentless football player. And so much of rushing the passer comes back to that urgency, that motor, that hustle, and then having some kind of physical trait to hang your hat on. Now, there's players in this class like KJ Henry, who I like a lot, but at the end of the day, KJ Henry's probably going to be a 4.8 guy. He's probably going to jump in the mid 32s, and that lack of really dynamic explosiveness, I think, shows up on tape for him. So I think the ceiling for those kinds of players is just a little bit lower. So they're more plentiful. They're easier to be found because they're not the rare unicorn blend of size and athleticism. So you can get those guys to play on your early downs. But when it comes time to hunt and go get the quarterback, you got to have some kind of special trait that you can be able to fall back on.
Keith, you're going to get a second to think about this because I'm putting DP on the spot before we get out of here. DP, when you're thinking about, I want you to pull one more name out for me, just one more name of a guy who is not being talked about as a first round, second round pick, and probably is going to take a year or two to develop. But they've got the traits, they have the tools, and I like what Kyle said. This person has the motor to be able to develop into a pass rusher. Who would that one guy be?
I'm going to stick with Auburn, and I'm going to go to their other pass rusher, Iku Leota, another big, long, athletic guy that can get downhill and play with a ferocious mentality. He plays the run well. He can put his hand in the dirt. They play him as a wide angle at times, and he can reduce those edges, and he's pretty good with his hands. He tore his pec, and he should, from reports, he should be healthy for the Senior Bowl to practice that week. So seeing him fully healthy in one-on-ones, I'm looking forward to it, to see him and Derek Hall. But I think that's a guy that you can get in that third, fourth round range that you can stash on your roster, watch him develop, use him as a DPR if you like, and get some productivity on the passing downs.
Keith, I'm going to you, big dog, and I'm just going to throw the name out to you because LSU's got a guy, right? Ojulari. Tell me, Keith, is he this? No one said his name, so I'm going to you for obvious reasons. Any shot he develops into a consistent pass rusher at the next level, and what do you think about him?
Ray G, man, you must have been reading my mind because when you was talking to Joe about designated pass rush, you was talking about closers, you was talking about guys that come in on a third down. I thought exactly of BJ Ojulari. So I'm glad you swung that back to me, man. And listen, he fits that athletic profile, right? He's 6'3", 235, 240 pounds. So he is going to have some concerns with NFL teams about him playing on early downs. But when you watch the film, the athletic profile is there, right? This guy can naturally move. He's naturally athletic. He has pass rush moves in his bag. So he's definitely a guy that I think on third downs early on in the NFL, he's going to be put on the field and told, just go get the quarterback, right? Don't worry about playing a run. We're going to put you on downs where we know that the offense is most likely passing the football, and go get the quarterback. So BJ Ojulari is definitely a name to circle if you feel as though your team needs pass rush help.
There it is. I asked for 4 names, and we got like 8 or 9 names of edge rushers. So stay tapped in to everything we're doing at the Draft Network. TDN 100, so much content out on this channel, written content on the website, and the best content, I'm telling you, the best content inside the Discord, premium Discord. I just got an alert that we're going to be looking at some Zach Charbonnet and Jordan Addison, Roshan Johnson and Jordan Addison over in the premium TDN Premium Discord. Join that service. Link to do all of that is in the description. If you appreciated this video, hit the thumbs up button, like the content, most importantly, subscribe and turn those alerts on. That way, every time new content drops over here on the Draft Network YouTube channel, you ain't got to search for it. It's right there on your phone, your computer, your laptop, your iPad, wherever. We got you covered here at the Draft Network. So for all of our scouts, Keith, Kyle, Joe, DP, and myself, we're out. Y'all have a good one. Peace.